So I have a background like starting a research experience and also worked in few companies, namely like 24 is a speech analytics domain. And also like I worked in banking industries also. So that's what I am here to give
Sir,
my.
sorry to interrupt. Your voice is feeble, sir. Can you please increase your voice?
Okay. Is it audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Um, I'm here to give me like whatever experience I have in the industries, like with respect to blockchain and AML, with respect to different domains which I experience. I'm trying to share my experience here as an overview, like what is blockchain and what is AI and what is in AI blockchain, how it is involved to each other. Like so, at the high level, I'll be explaining. So feel free to ask any questions in between if you feel like you're not very clear or you want to have more clarity. Please feel free to ask the questions. So so to start with, like my presentation, just I want to start with like how AI is used in blockchain. Then only you will get an idea like how both are interrelated. So when we are taking AI, so AI is a technology, right? And blockchains are the other verticals. So there are two different verticals. So AI blockchain is a digital ledger that employs intelligent agents, intelligent digital agents to govern the chain, entire chain in the blockchain technology. The company's blockchain acts as a cyber security tool and digital ledger for all the real-time industries. Like we can take any industries like estate or media, healthcare, and of course financial industries. So what is like how it is different from the normal blockchain and AI related? No, it is like a more intelligent digital agents was deployed in the process. So that's what it is differ from normal blockchain and a applied blockchain. So this is a major difference between these two different agents. So first I will go through on what is blockchain and how it is like that. Then we'll touch upon AI and I'll explain few use case scenarios. Then you can ask if you have any doubts. We'll go in this order. So this is the agenda about the blockchain. So what is blockchain? So everyone like I think like already you're in the workshop, so you most of them would be very clear. So anyhow, I'm repeating here. So blockchain is a trusted distributed ledger with a shared business process. So normally in the olden days, the way of managing the um, ledger is a different, like it is decentralized and it is like managing and maintaining the records is a very tedious process. That's what blockchain comes into picture, like to maintain a trustworthy in transaction between the parties. So it records all the transactions and track assets in the business. And in all aspect, like we can say, like it is a single entity or a multiple entity. It try to record all the transactions in a centralized distributed ledger. So an asset can be a tangible asset. Like it can be anything, tangible or intangible. We can take example like tangible assets like house, a car, cash, land. These are tangible assets. And to state out for intangible, we can tell any intellectual properties, patents, copyrights, any publications, or anything which is in the form of documents and those things. So those things will comes under intangible. So these are the two different assets that will be maintained in under this blockchain to have a secure transaction. And to add more details, like we can say like so everyone is thinking, right? Initially when blockchain comes into picture and like everyone is thinking blockchain is not equal like Bitcoin. They're confused. There is a lot of confusion between Bitcoin and blockchain. So Bitcoin not equal to blockchain because blockchain provides the means to record and store Bitcoin transaction. But blockchain has many other use cases beyond Bitcoin. Bitcoin is one of the use case of the blockchain. So we should not have a confusion here. Like a Bitcoin is equal to blockchain, or is everything Bitcoin, like that. So this is a major difference, or it is like it is one of the use case like that. There are a lot of use cases there in the industry to um, use the blockchain. So I want to go through the history of the blockchain when it was started. No, like in 1990s itself, like the concept of distributed companies has come around, and it started the origin. I can say. Then in 2009, like Santoshi Nakamoto created a Bitcoin and introduced to the concept of blockchain to create decentralized ledger, and it was maintained by anonymous consents. So slowly, like from 1990 to 2009, it got like a full big picture. I can say, like it started like everyone started knowing about blockchain in 2009. Slowly, not entirely, but a person who was already involved in the R&D, those things, no, those persons are started trying to build the use cases around the Bitcoin, and it was started in 2009. Then it was started its application, like I can say, like in 2011 to 12, like the deployment of cryptocurrency in application related to cash was come into picture. And 2012 to 13, the currency transfer and digital payment systems was there, and it was applied widely in all the industries. And in 2013 to 14, the financial markets and application using blockchain beyond cash transaction come into till 2012, it was only used for the financial transactions alone. After 2012, like 13 to 14, it started used in other contracts also. Like the use cases get expanded in 13 to 14. And the evolution of smart contracts, like there is a smartness always, no, in the industry, in any technology we are taking. Like first initially it starts with the high level, then it is startly trying to make more user friendly and more understandable thing, and easy to reach all the persons, or all the use cases easily applied across all the applications. So it's started evolving the smarter contracts in 2014-15. Now the market evolution and sub development and exploration across industries started from 17. Now everyone knows it was in a different level. Like like without blockchain, there is no security. That kind of situation arises right now, and almost every security thing is having the blockchain applied. So why blockchain is very important here? So throughout the histories, if you see the instrument of trust such as money, letters, credit card, banking system have emerged to facilitate exchange of value and protect buyers and sellers. Like it gives the mutual protection for both the parties. Like it gives the trust to both buyers as well as the sellers. So that's what it gives the impact. Like everywhere it was used widely. That is the main reason. One of the main reason we can tell. Then the technical advancement, like virtually eliminating the distance between the buyers and sellers. No need to go in person. Actually, now the world is moving towards like everything remote. Everything is remote. Like consider like last 2 years we are facing this pandemic situation. Like everything now becomes like remote, right? So not even like for buying things and everything's all everything comes into home, and just by a click over the mobile app, all the groceries or everything we are getting through online. And the persons going in person and banking, the things was not get reduced much. Like now there is like we are moving towards the world of non-banking. Like home banking is not going to be very uh, high. Like person move, like consider now how many percentage of the peoples are going to the banks. Like now everything is online, like through internet banking or through mobile banking or through other kind of application. We are doing everything is online because only we have a secure and safe safety due to the technologies like Bitcoin, like blockchain. that gives the trustworthiness, and we are doing all the things online and making sure we are more comfortable in doing this without any problem. So this aspect of many business transactions remains inefficient and expensive and vulnerable, right? So the following are the limitations we can say. So duplication of efforts and third-party validation, fraud, cyber attacks, and simple mistakes may exposing all participants in the network to risk in a centralized system, such as a bank is compromised. So if even a simple mistakes or no in the transaction will lead to the high risk to all the participants in the blockchain. So this kind of limitations are there. So limited transparency and inconsistent information hinder the efficient movement of goods in the shipping industries. So these are the some of the limitations we can state out here. So this is an inefficient system, right? So earlier everything is like this, like participants A's record and participant B record and bank records, auditor records, regulatory and insurer records. Like inefficient, expensive, and it is more vulnerable to all the parties. Like each and everyone is having their own records and in person, and we don't know what is like it is trustworthy or not. So it is previously it was like this. So anyone can tamper anything. Like it was not known to the third party. So it is a kind of communication earlier, and now we can say like with with the blockchain we eliminate those limitations. Like participant A's record and B's record and record, like everything got sent like shared at a single place, like everyone can have a view on what is happening in in their chain. So everything is like open now, and it is like proven and immutable, and finality we can say. Immutability, like we cannot able to change anything or tamper anything in the given blockchain. No, none of the information get changed by any parties involved in the transaction. So it was a blockchain. Like why it is called blockchain? Why we are calling this as a blockchain? Because if you see these blocks, right? Each and every blocks we have a block hash and previous block hash, transaction and transaction hash. So if you could see in the picture that the previous block hash was present in the next block. So this gives the chain, like a chain connect between the transaction, like this hash value of, so it is not a tamper, or it is like a tamper proof kind of transaction, and that's what it is called as blockchain, since it is having the information about the previous block, and there is a connectivity between the one block to the other block in terms of block hash of the previous blockchain. So requirements of blockchain for business. How? This is like shared ledger. What is shared ledger and smart contract here, and trust and privacy. These are the major requirements we can say. Like what shared ledger is doing here. So upon only distributed systems of the records shared across the business record network was managed here, and by smart contract, the business teams embedded in transact, transaction database and executed with transaction was taken care by smart contracts, and transactions are endorsed by. Sorry, your voice is not clear.
Sir, you can continue, sir.
Okay, fine. So trust was maintained, endorsed by 11 participants, and it was uh, shared among the other party through the chain of informations, and ensure appropriate visibility and transactions insecure and authenticated, like it taken by the privacy. So this is a shared contract. More detail about the shared ledger is like it is shared between the participants, and participants have their own copy through replication and permission. And so participants can see only appropriate transactions. The shared system of a record, like it have all these transaction details at one place, they can have their own, and they can able to share the same, and it is not tamper. And through smart contract, what we are doing, like verifiable and signed things, are like everything on digital, right? Those things comes under smart contract and encoded in programming language. It like now lot of improvements in the technology. So using the encoded way, we come across like how smart contracts are more secure than the normal contract agreements. And transaction need to be authenticated, right? So anything to be authenticated. So here we are using the smarter way of authenticating through cryptography, sent to each and every transactions. It is moving across the different participants. So it is taken by the proper cryptography technology for maintaining the privacy. And it was endorsed, like the participant endorsed the transaction and assess a very fail audit trials to make the trustworthiness across all the transactions. So we can say these are the characteristics we can say when we are taking the blockchain network. These are the characteristics like concerns, proven immutability, and finality. So these are the main characteristics of the blockchain. Like what is concerns here? Like for a transaction to be valid, all participants must agree on the validity. So that is the concerns here in the blockchain network. And proven is like participants know where the asset came from and how it is ownership has changed over the time. Now who is having the ownership and previously who is having that ownership, from where it is coming from. So these are all comes under the proven. So these are the things we'll come to know in the blockchain network very clearly when compared to the previous older way of transaction. We are not more confident about who is own the product and now who is owning the product and what is the time duration of the asset. Like anything was a lot of information was missing, and we are not more confident about the information shared by the party which we are going to buy. But here we can say like everything is open, and over the time all the participants knows where the asset is come from, what is the duration of the validity of the asset. Like everything is more visible to the participants in the blockchain network. And it is immutability. What is immutability here? Like no participants can tamper with a transaction after it has been recorded in the ledger. So that's what it is, immutable. Like we couldn't able to change any informations unless there is a transaction error. So if it's a transaction error, a new transaction must be used to reverse the error, because no other way. The entire transaction has to be repeated again. So that is like the way the blockchain works, and that's what it is called as immutable. Like it is like none of the information can be changed or tampered in the blockchain network. And finality, like this is the other characteristics of the blockchain, is a single shared ledger provides one place to go to determine the ownership of the asset or the completion of the transaction. So that's what it is this blockchain network is called as finality here. So identifying participants and their roles. So we can say in a blockchain, these are the participants and their roles involved in the entire transaction. So blockchain user, regulator, blockchain developer, blockchain network operator, and certificate authority. Participants play their role play here. Now, if you take user, a participant with permission to join the blockchain network and conduct transaction with other network participants. These are like the main responsibility of the blockchain user. And what the regulator is doing here, a blockchain like it's a special permission to oversee the transaction happening within the network. So the regulator will be taking care of these special permissions in the blockchain network. And what blockchain developer is doing here. So the programmer who creates application and smart contracts and enable the blockchain users to conduct transactions, everything was taken care by the blockchain developer here. So that's a role of blockchain developer and what's the role of blockchain network operator here. They're like network operator takes care of the other special permissions and authority to define, create, manage, monitor the blockchain network. So that's the role of blockchain network operator in the blockchain transaction. So each business on the blockchain network has a blockchain network operator. Without them, the network was not like we couldn't able to have the blockchain network. Like and certificate authority. So here, what is the role of certificate authority? Yeah, like an individual who issues or manage the different types of certificate request to run a permissioned blockchain. For example, you can take certificates may be needed to issue to the blockchain users or to the individual transactions. So exploring blockchain application, like how the ownership transfer happened up from one party to the next party. There will be a manufacturer, they have their own in-house ledger, like dealer have his in-house ledger, like that. Different parties involved in the transaction have their own ledger, and the regulator have the in-house ledger. So this is the way the ownership was maintained in the shared ledger. And this is how it was converted now. Now how we are maintaining those things in the current world of blockchain. Like we can see, like different nodes have their own information, and it was linked to the shared ledger and shared contracts. So this shared contract was accepted by the each and every node. Like we can say not node, like each and every participants in that transaction was agreeing to the smart contracts, and they have their own entries in the shared ledger. All the transactions will be maintained at one place, and it was all the participants or participants in the particular transaction was linked to them. And how it saves, like what are the benefits here, what are the benefits we are getting out of this. Like it saves lot of time, like transaction time from days to near in like it is saves lot of time in terms of like everything is online and it is safer, and removes cost like overhead and cost intermediates involved in handling the transaction. We can say like everything is smarter way of handling, like it automatically reduces the cost and reduces the risk, like as I mentioned in the previous slides, like it is tamper proof and fraud, like if cybercrime, these kind of, like we can say like without security nothing is possible. So it reduces, like with the, since it has a proper security system behind the technology, like it is tamper proof and it reduces the risk automatically and increases the trust. Like record keeping and process, like everything at one place, and it is like very easily and shareable across the other participants. So in that way it increases trust by having smart contracts and other stuffs in the blockchain technology or blockchain network. So yeah, these are the key players for blockchain adoption: the regulator, industry group, and market maker. These are the key players we can say who is widely using the blockchain in the transactions in a better way. The regulators are keen to support blockchain based innovations, and the industry group you can take like encourage the best practices to making recommendations to the members in a for any industries using the blockchain technology. They are having best practices to be implemented. So any industry group, they are the key players here. So and market maker, like everything like new creates a new and good services. So they want to go with the latest innovative technologies in the market for easy reaching, as well as to make them on top of the market. They need to be more secure and smart. So these are the key players we can say. Applications and use cases of blockchain. So this is a traditional online transaction, right? There will be a third party. You want to send money, and you want to like we can say like it is like what is the limitation here? It is more expensive, slow, and subject to fraud. So that's what now we are moving to a blockchain way of doing the transaction. Here, if A wants to send money to B, the transaction is represented as a block, and this block is broadcasted to the every node in the network. So B again, like sufficient miners approves the transaction, like there is a approval authority, right? So sufficient miners approve the transactions, and the transaction is added to the blockchain, like with the hash block, like as I mentioned, like each and every block has its own information, like transaction details, like transaction ID, transaction block, and previous blockchain's address. Like based on the number of per transaction, it has its own blockchain information, and the B receives the money as intended. So this is a way, current way of operation taken place in the blockchain. And again, like I repeated few information about the shared reference, like what and how the shared reference are used and how it is beneficial. It is like consolidated data set reduces error, and it is a very real time access to the referential data, like instant we can say, like no need to wait for a long time to have the data to see the transaction. Like it is very real time and naturally supports code editing and routing code transfer between the participants. Like it is very easy and shareable, and it is smarter. And also in supply chain, how it is used, like what and how again. So it's a like what is like manufacturer production date, batch, and even the manufacturing machine program. That's what like maintained here, and how the blockchain holds the complete proven details of each component apart and accessible by each manufacturer in the production, and it maintains the all the details in terms of like increasing the trust, and no authority wants the proven improves. Like these are the other benefits I can say, like in the supply chain, improvement in system utilization, recall specific rather than cross fleet. So this is the one use case here, how it is happening. So that's what in my previous slides I've explained here. So not only it is used in the financial, as I mentioned, no, it is also used in the other industries like diamond industries to maintain the trust for how starting from mining to the material, how it was like for in each and everything there was a trust chain maintained to maintain the historical ledger of the diamond from mine to finger. That is a simple process. So this is the history, like ethical sourcing of diamond using blockchain, like source, how it was maintained, like how the informations will be present in the blockchain, like to make sure like how trust we are how efficiently we are using the blockchain technology to maintain the information without any tamper of data, like all like even the dimension of the material and all those things, like that this gives the confidence like we are getting the right material, and we are more trustable when compared to the other technologies. So this is the link you can able to see how supply chain in food industries using the blockchain pilot. It's a pilot project done by IBM and Walmart. So this will give you a full picture how it was used in the industries, like the industries. So why audit and compliance? It is like one of the characteristics, and I can say this is like very useful, right? For any industry, audit will be there, and it is complaint proof. So when we are implementing blockchain, there are a lot of benefits in the auditing, like lowers the cost of audit and regulatory compliance, and provides seek and find access to auditors and regulators, and change the nature of compliance from passive to active. Like everything will be at one place, no need to have a multiple records, or we need to go through multiple documents to verify whether the given information is right or wrong. But in a blockchain, using the blockchain kind of technology, auditing and compliance become very easy. So this is the other use case, like a letter of credit in the banking industry. So we can say like company A buys buyers, like there will be a seller contract, right? The company A sells like getting contracts from the land B and from the bank. How the transaction happened between them, from company A to company B, using this letter of credit. This is one of the use case in the banking industry. So the people in the banking side, they will know what is the letter of credit here. Further examples in the industry, we can say financial. These are the examples we can tell, like trade finance, cross currency payments, mortgages. These are the transactions, financial transactions. This was applied, and public sector, retail, insurance, manufacturing. So that's why in manufacturing we seen how it was used in supply chain and product cost and maintenance tracking. And the same way insurance, how the claiming process works, risk proven as asset usage history, claim file, and even in the retail, like royalty programs. And in public sector, we can sell citizen identity, like medical records, this and that. So it is like free. Also, like someone interested in who is involved in R&D, right? They can try the links. Actually, they can try themselves, register in the IBM cloud.ibm.com. They can register, sign up an IBM account, log into the cloud account, and they can explore. So here I'm sharing the screenshots. After logging in, you can able to see these details for exploring the blockchain, and there will be a blockchain platform where they can able to create their own use case and try to explore these things. So these are the screenshots just for the reference I've attached here. So they can create their own plan, like for free for us to explore. They can create for free, and they can explore. So this is the blockchain. With respect to AML, I want to touch upon before concluding the meeting. So is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is the agenda of the AML side I want to touch upon, so that you will understand, as I mentioned, how to make the digital agents more intelligent. So that's the main difference. We can say how, in what ways. But in my current presentation, I'm just going to touch upon the supervised thing, because it is a broad, very broad area here. AML, if you take it is a broad area, but due to now for the limited, like the time given, so I will be explaining more about the supervised machine learning, and how to make these agents more intelligent in the way how the supervised learnings can be used in a better way for making the agents, the digital agents, more intelligent. So previously we can say like it was like how the evolution of the industry evolved to 4.0. Like initially it is mechanical, everything is mechanical, right? In 1917 84, if you see, like everything is mechanical and nothing is automated. Then we, like in 2.0, like electrical mass production comes into picture, like like we started moving towards like reducing the manual effort, started creating machines for ourselves, for our basic use cases. Starting from anything we can tell, in the older days everything is manual. Then slowly people started inventing small machines to serve us, like using the electrical uh, thing as an evolution, as a mass production, we can say, with the help of electrical energy and other source of energy. Then, and then to add upon these things, no, internet comes into picture. That is that period we are calling as 3.0. In 1969, internet get evolved, and we started using digital things like like I can say like online trans, like everything online, right? So, but in 1969 we started using online thing for small use cases. At least previously it was not for transaction, but at least we can view the messages, getting SMS from the banking industry, like you did this transaction, this is your balance. That kind of level, small use cases getting improved in 3.0. And now we are in 4.0, like today, empowering like people. Now everything getting automated. Nothing is like it is impossible right now. In the current standard world, we can say like everything is automated, and going in person to the banking or to anything, like I'm saying, it is not only banking, not only shopping, like everything is now online. Like sitting at one place, we can do everything, uh, whatever possible, we can do it online, like tap. Now you see like not even initially we have ATMs, then a POS machine comes, now tap and pay comes. Now there is no pause machine. Now we have a mobile where we can place our call over the mobile app. Now the transaction will be taken place through tap in the mobile itself. So that kind of evolution, we are in the world of that kind of smartness now built everywhere, and it is like everything got like now microservices everywhere. So that's what, like with the blockchain AML kind of technologies, now we build a smartness for all our use cases, starting from small use case to very big use case. We can able to achieve these things. But A is used only to make the use case achieved via the blockchain, as how smart it can work. It just adds a smartness to the use case. In a way, how AML used in different industries is more different, and here it is used to add more value, like to the how smarter the transaction in happen, as well as like for identifying the malfunctions happen, or the smarter way of predicting the anomalies going to happen in the transaction. So that kind of thing AML brings into, like for using the blockchain technology. So what is the difference between blockchain and AI? So AI is essentially is a centralized technology, while decentralization is the essential essence of the blockchain. The next crucial difference between the artificial intelligence is the transparency. But we can tell like there are a lot of other things we can. Is blockchain is a form of AI? Yes, blockchain can enable decentralized marketplaces and coordination platforms that can be used for many components of artificial intelligence. That we can include computing power, data, and algorithms. These will parent many other innovations and usage of AI to a greater level, I can say. So in that way, yes, blockchain is a form of AI. So if you can tell like is blockchain a cloud computing? Yes, I can say the blockchain like the cloud, it's a distributed system, right? But unlike the traditional databases, we can say including cloud, where data is stored on their centralized server, blockchain is stored on a machine for all participants. So in that way, it is, yes, it is a distributed system, and it is part of the cloud computing also. So so this is an overview. We can say like what are the other things involved in AMI, like starting from neural networks, planning, robotics, machine learning, natural language processing, perception language, cognitive systems. So these are the small other areas involved in artificial intelligence. Like these are combined together to form the artificial intelligence. So how like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning differ. So here AI is a program that can essence, reason, and act. Like it is a bigger picture. Within that, only machine learning and deep learning comes into. Like while we are taking a machine learning, it's just a part of artificial intelligence, like algorithms whose performance improve as they expose to more data over the time. And here, if you want to go in depth, then it is like it's again a part of machine learning. Deep learning is a part of machine learning, a subset of machine learning in which multi-layered neural networks learn from vast amount of data. Like again, the level of learning between the machine learning and deep learning, the level of learning uh, or the agents having exposure to the algorithms, that is a different, but it is again a subset of machine learning. So this is the how it was evolved, how AI was evolved is like in 1950s, everything like we can say it was early intelligence. It was like very very semi-automated. We can tell in 1950s. Then again, with the involvement of machine learning, it started. We have started seeing the results in the application, like how smarter it became. Then now we are after 2010, we can able to see like how the industries get evolved using AML, like all the use cases get smarter and intelligent in all the aspects, like predicting the weather. We can see anything, right? Now the prediction of weather, the rainfall, everything is become more accurate, more accurate. When you if you see the compared to the previous in our own experience, like the weather reporting was not that much accurate, right? Before AML plays the now you see how accurate the weather reporting and other aspects in terms of just I'm mentioning one use case, but in other like even the healthcare industries, like predicting the disease when compared to the previous olden days, like how accurate right now, like with this kind of symptoms, this is like everything was getting automated, and we using AML kind of technologies, now everything get predicted very accurately, and it is very early also, not only accurate, at the very early stage itself we can be able to predict what is going to happen next. So these are types of machine learning: supervised, unsupervised, and reinforced. Supervised like regression, classification, and it is more about like learning from the data. And unsupervised is data driven, like clustering, and like clustering comes into picture when we go for unsupervised learning. And reinforcement, algorithm learns to react to an environment. So reinforcement was not widely used, but again, if you could take industry perspective, supervised is used very, very widely in all the applications, since the way of implementation and having data, we can able to build any use cases. So supervised is used very widely compared to the other two, but reinforcement is less used, less. These are various use cases. I can say like if you want to go one by one, it will take time. But these are the other like image classification, customer retention, diagnostics, forecasting, prediction, process, robotics, real-time cluster, recommendation systems, big data, storage, structure discovery. So these are the different various use cases where the supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement was applied. So when we see the reinforcement learning, we can tell AI, game AI, learning task, skill acquisition, robotics. This all comes under reinforcement. That's what I said. It is used very high level in only limited industries when compared to unsupervised or supervised. But supervised used in almost all the industries, like they comes under like classification, regression, or the major categories, and based on that, the various industries were using these AI technologies for different use cases. So what is supervised learning here? Supervised learning algorithms learns from the labeled training data, help us to predict outcomes for the unfrozen data. So as supervision in the learning comes from the labeled example in the training data sets. So while we are building the training data sets, right, we will label the data under a certain label. For example, if we take, I want to identify a sentiment present in the document. So what I will do, I will using the machine learning algorithm, I want to predict this using supervised learning algorithms. So any algorithms need the labeled data. What is the labeled data here? So I need to label the document related to positive sentiment and tag it under positive sentiment. I need to tell document A is the reference to positive sentiment and document B is again positive. Then I will tag document C and D as negative, and these are the example documents which is giving the negatives, like which is giving the impact of negative sentiment present the based on the content in the document I am saying. So in that way, I'm tagging the based on the contents in the document, I'm tagging that under a different classes like positive and negative kind of things. So when I am giving a new document based on the learning, like supervised algorithm, what it does based on the learnings from the data sets available, like document A and B and sorry, N, B and positive and C and D or negative, right? So based on the contents and what are the contents present in the new document, it try to classify either the document present to the category positive or negative or neutral. Consider we based on the score, everything is a score, right? If I am telling the score is near to like what I say, like 80 percentage, then I'm telling that document is positive. When it is on the scores which is matching the positive score document, 80 percentage of the contents are matching with the new document, then I'm telling that document is positive. If it is matching 80 percentage towards the negative data set present in the data set, then I'm telling that particular document present to the negative sentiment kind of document. If I am telling the document is having only 50 percentage, then I can mark that particular document as a neutral. It neither present to the positive or not present to the negative. So it is a neutral document. So based on the score or threshold, we can tell these are the two different terminologies used in AML. Like based on everything is based on the threshold thing. We need to and also based on the uh, like what to say, like how it is applied or how it is used. We need to derive the threshold and define based on that we'll segregate the new documents, or it is I'm telling in the perspective to this particular use case, but it applies to the other use cases. Based on that, the threshold limit will be defined, and based on that output score from the algorithm, it was tagged under different categories. Like in the healthcare, the same kind of thing. No, if these are the symptoms, then I'm telling this person or this patient is having this disease. Like that, I'm saying. So if the person is having these symptoms, so this is of other kind of disease, and so it leads to different use cases when we are talking about the use of AI in terms of in different industries. It differ from each and everything. So this is how I explain how it works. The objective of supervised model is to predict the correct label for newly presented input. Like we need to do method training data with conserved inputs paired with correct outputs. Then during training, the algorithm will search for patterns in the data that correlate with the desired outputs. After training, a supervised learning algorithm will take into new unseen inputs and will determine which label the new input is classified based on the prior training data. That's what I mentioned. It works in this particular pattern to identify the correct tagging. So this is the stages, like how the input was received and how it is analyzed. And then third, we need to find the patterns, then do the prediction or decisions here and learn from the feedback. So it decides what that particular input is of what category. So that was decided at the end stage. And this is the flow. Data warehouse, acquire data, prepare data. From the preparation, we need to segregate two different data. One is training data and the test data. The test data should not be the part of training data. Otherwise, what will happen? No, always, if that is a part of training data, then everything will be working as expected. I will not get the confidence. So we should segregate the training data and test data separately in the process of AML. Then from the training data, we have model development. Then model testing will be done using test data. Then we need to evaluate the results. Then only we'll deploy. So the results is giving the good accuracy in terms of precision and recall. Then we are telling that particular model is working as expected. Then when that particular use case will be deployed for the production. Hence, the whole process will repeat with the different or additional data until we are getting the confident results from the algorithm. So this is the simple use case, like segregating spam or not spam. It learns like when both the inputs are like we are giving both the things to the system, it learns and the new mail comes, it intelligently segregates this is a spam mail or a not spam mail. How it is working, like it internally based on the learning from the data already fed to the system, it tried to segregate the categories as spam or not spam. So these are the types, like in this supervised thing, classification and regression are the very broad categories of supervised learning. So this is a classical example for classification problem. Like we can tell like girl A and like girl and boy, model training based on the new data arriving. No, it is trying to based on the pattern and inputs, pixel values and all those things. No, considering to those values, like model get trained when new picture was given, it is trying to predict the given picture is of male or female. This is a kind of classification problem. By this way, we solve this problem for segregating the pictures. This is regression. So this is the past data, model training, and again prediction happened with the new data, and we are predicting either we are getting the weather prediction properly. So this is a high level. We are telling what is classification is, what is regression is. Like classification is the task of predicting a discrete class label. In this classification problem, there are two classes, as I mentioned. One called binary. More than two classes is called multi-class function. Based on the number of features, the number of classes get increased. As I mentioned, no positive and negative kind of thing. No, that is two different class kind of use case. But when we take other use cases, the number of classes might keep increasing in the case of classification problems. And regression is a task of predicting the continuous quantity, like requires the prediction, or like we can say multiple input variables in called multivariate regression problem. Predicting the price of stock over a period of time is a regression problem. Predicting the petrol price is a regression problem. Predicting the weather thing, that is a other regression problem. Like this it works. So that's what I want to touch upon, only supervised learning here, and I was done with the supervised thing. So is there any questions you can ask now? So these are like different verticals, as I mentioned, A and ML, and using this AML, supervised learning or unsupervised based on your use case. You can choose and apply and make your agents more intelligent. So in that way, it was related to blockchain. That AML was related to blockchain, and you applied to the your agents to make the digital agents more smart. So here I'm stopping. So any questions you can raise. Feel free to ask.
Yes, dear participants, if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and you can ask your questions. Yes, if there is no more questions, sir, thank you, Prabhu sir. We have next speaker who is waiting for us.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for the
Yes, sir.
opportunity.
Thank you,
Prabhu.
sir. Thank you, sir. I would like to call Mr. Ashdeep, System Engineer, Rapid Labs, TCS. He is alumni of our SRM University. Ashdeep, Ashdeep will be giving you the demonstration. Say probably it will be for an half an hour session. Okay, so probably you can use it more effectively. Ashdeep, you can start presenting. Thank you. Ashdeep, sir, you can start presenting, sir.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Kavishankar sir. Good morning, all. Thank you all for joining. This is Harshdeep here, and currently I'm working in TCS Rapid Labs, where we work on digital 4.0 technologies to cater to the client-specific requirements. So allow me to just share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So, this is a use case which I developed as a during my tenure, and this is called Ethereum-based lending process management system. So, as I was saying in the previous session, you're all very well acquainted with the use of blockchain in transaction management. So, this touches upon that very well, and so the idea over here is to include logic into transactions, and we want to automate the transactions between remitters and beneficiaries in loan management using blockchain. And I use smart contracts over here to give logic to the transactions. And this is a very simple use case of loan management in which we try to remove the regulatory authorities such as banks and NBFCs, payment gateways as a third party. So this is a trustless mechanism. So just hang on, and I'll share the demo as well for the same. So what we want to do over here is that we want to create a blockchain that will handle loan management system for all the way from applications, getting the application to dispersal, as well as till deposition. And this is a new concept here is invoked, which is called as a DAO. It is a decentralized autonomous organization. So what we do is in a blockchain, we know that it is a trustless mechanism, and we all the nodes have the copies of ledgers, and we have a voting protocol and a consensus mechanism present over there. Similarly, let's say suppose we want to decentralize it, but we want to decentralize the control of the blockchain to a certain group of members only. And let's say suppose there are 10 nodes, and we want to appoint three nodes of them as the governors who will govern over the blockchain. So we are going to use something our own cryptocurrency trust tokens for providing control and governance authority to the to those three particular nodes. So for the whole purpose of this project is to remove banks as the middleman, and we want to improve and we want to encourage peer-to-peer lending. So if say suppose Kavi Shankar sir wants to lend me some money, then it is very easy for we don't want any third party such as banks or any other regulatory authority to come in between, and we can basically save millions in transaction fees as well as the processing fees, etc. So we use so over here in this for this particular solution, I've used Node.js, Vue.js, Solidity as for contract level programming, and used Ganache for testing the smart contracts. So what trust tokens are? Trust tokens are cryptocurrency used for providing voting power to the blockchain managers, and they can be called trustees as well as governors, and they are issued via initial coin offering. And so we have a few modules here. I'll go through them one by one. So first module is that there are investors who want to invest in a lending business, and they use Ethereums, or we call them ethers nowadays, to invest in that particular application. And then in the ICO, they are issued trust tokens as they are investors in that application. So basically, once a set of investors invest in an application using the ICO, they are issued trust tokens. And after that, that investor becomes a trustee of that organization and automatically becomes a governor or a manager of that DAO system. So in that, after the ICO process is done, we come to the lending area where the process is usual, very orthodox, where a requester puts a request for a loan, and the request is put up in an open lending pool, and all the lenders can see that open request, and they can basically choose to lend money based on repayment terms such as interest, etc. So we also have a member area over here. We defined investors as trustees. So these trustees want to be able to govern that blockchain. So using those trust tokens issued to them via the ICO, they are able to govern the blockchain. So for example, to add more governors and to remove more governors, and to put proposals and perform separate voting consensus, which will be explained in a bit. So I'll just quickly hover to the demo which I've recorded. Please let me know if you can hear this.
System. This is an attempt to democratize the lending management and to provide decentralization of power. Currently, we have RBI and other regulatory authorities that govern over the lending practices. And suppose if three people, let's say three lenders, wanted to start their own lending startup, in that case, they have to first take licenses and the proper documentation from the regulatory authorities and get a lot of paperwork done so that they can start their lending processes. Now, let's say suppose we want to decentralize this process and we want to remove the RBI or other regulatory authorities as the third parties who are the authorities. Now, in this case, I have created a scenario over here. We have three lenders who want to start their own loan management business, and we have a student who wants to apply for a student loan. And let's say we want to invest 10 ethers into this business, and we distribute equity of the startup based on the investment made by each of these lenders. And so for that, I'll go to the browser, and I have MetaMask over here, in which is connected to the Ganache blockchain. And I have 4 accounts over here, 3 of which are lenders and 1 is a student. And let me switch over to the lender account, and I'll start the application. So the first step of this particular application is to issue trust tokens. And how we do this is we invest, the lenders invest to a goal of 10 ethers, and as per their contribution out of 10, they are issued trust tokens. So let's say suppose I have this lender 1, and he's investing, let's say 3 ethers over here. And if you see, it will ask for my authorization from MetaMask. And if I confirm this particular transaction, we see the number of participants has become 1 from 0. And you can clearly see that total ethers totally invested in this particular app has become 3 ethers. Similarly, if I switch over to the other users, let's say if I go to the lenders 2 account and then I invest another 3 ethers from this account and another 4 from another account. So that will basically issue trust tokens based on the contribution. So let's say suppose we the current 2 participants invested 3 ethers each, they were issued 300 tokens out of this total 1000 trust tokens available. And similarly, I'll go with the third account and we'll basically distribute trust tokens as part of the ICO. Now, since the ICO is complete, we have come to our landing page. We have two segments here. One is a lending and one is the management. So we'll initially go with the management part. Let's say suppose we want to be able to use this blockchain to provide control and the governance over this management system. How will we do that? So if you see over here, we have something called as a member area. So in the member area, each of these members who have contributed and invested in this particular application, you can see their investment account and the ethers they each were given during the ICO process. Now, the first person who invested into this business, he or she became the primary trustee. Once we invest into this, we become a trustee of this particular application. So I'll quickly switch over to the student account to show the difference between the management area for both of them. If you go to the student account and you check over there, there is in the management section, you will not find a member area. However, if you go into any other account which has trust tokens, so basically all the accounts that have some trust tokens issued to them, they are able to access the member management area. Now, this member area is actually used to add and remove members who are the governors of this particular blockchain. Now, let's say suppose I want right now there is something called as a contract fee. Okay, so during the lending process, we have a contract fee that the lenders will charge for using their platform. Now, suppose as a first lender, I want to be able to change that contract fee. So first point over here is that the blockchain is used to distribute the control of this particular fee control. Now, let's say suppose we have we currently if you see, we have one member in this blockchain who is authorized to give make any changes to the control mechanisms. And if we go over to the other accounts, we will not be able to see this fee control area. So right now, what if so all these 3 lenders are trustees, and how will we be able to add them as members to the governance? Now, let's say suppose I want to let's say I want to change the contract fee from 1 Ethereum to some other amount, let's say 0.5 ethers. Now, in that case, I will submit a proposal, and all the members who are in the governance will receive a voting section where they will vote, and the voting protocol will initiate the process for changing this fee control. Now, you realize over here, we only have one member in the governance area. Now, if we confirm this transaction, and we'll see a voting protocol has been initiated. And if we agree to this, right now, this particular member, the lender 1, is the only governing member of the blockchain. Now, if he clicks on agrees, he basically has the 100%. He has 100% voting power right now. Now, if we agree on that, the contract fee will be changed. So basically, since this was the only particular member who was in the governance, then that is why this particular lender was able to make a unilateral decision. Now, let's say suppose we go to another lender, and we want to add this particular person into our members area where they can have control over the fee control and other things. Now we'll go and first we'll take the address of that particular member, and we'll go to the the first governors area, management area, and we'll make an attempt to add this particular user. So even adding other users, other members is based on voting protocols. So since this person is the only person who, this lender one is the only governor over here, he will have 100% vote. And basically they are right now, what this person is doing is, since they have about 400 trust tokens and the lender 2 has 300 trust tokens, this lender 1 is authorizing and distributing the control of the blockchain based on the number of trust tokens that the lender 2 has. So if we see again, we can see a voting protocol has been initiated for adding a member, and if we agree, then the transaction will initiate, and once the transaction is complete, the lender 2 will be added as a member. And if previously we were not able to see the member area for this lender 2, we'll now be able to see the member area for lender 2. Similarly, if we go and we repeat this process for lender 3 as well, then we will be able to add that particular lender as a member, governing member of this particular blockchain. So again, we'll initiate the voting protocol. And the member will be added. So we have 3 listed members who are lenders, and they each have invested a certain amount of ethers, and they each have certain amount of trust tokens. So basically, trust tokens were used over here to provide interface and the access to the right people. Now, let's say, suppose we want to change the contract fee. In this case, right now, let's say we switch on to lender 1. Okay, so we'll go with changing the contract fee back to 1. So once we submit a proposal, then a voting protocol will be initiated. This time, this lender doesn't have 100% control of the blockchain. So in that manner, if we go and agree, the voting protocol will not be finished this time. It will ask for more vote. Now, if we go back to lender 2, let's say, and if we go to the member area, we will see a proposal has been initiated to change the contract fee back to from 0.5 to 1 ethers. And if the second lender agrees to that, that implies that 3 plus 3, that means 60% of the trust tokens are used for voting for this particular change. And then if we confirm this particular transaction, the contract fee will be changed because voting protocol has been completed. So voting protocol depends on the scenario that the majority of the trust tokens should be inclined towards making that particular proposal agree. Now, if we go, we are able to now change the contract fee and add members to the governance. And now let's say we come back to the crux and the functional part of the blockchain. Now let us go to the lending area. So let's say, suppose I am a student and I want to use this platform to get a student loan, and I will, for example, I want to be able to add a request, right? So if I ask for, let's say, 2 ethers, right, and I want to pay back 2.5 ethers, it is important to note that the payback amount will have to be greater than the ask amount. So we'll keep it as 2.5 ethers. Now we'll give a description. And once this transaction is committed on the blockchain, a request will be put in the open lending requests. So if we go into the open lending request area, we'll be able to find the request in the lenders area. So let's say I'll switch to the lender account and I go back to the lending area. I'll see an open lending request. So this asker over here represents the address of that particular student, and the amount they have asked and the payback amount. So if you see over here, we have a denotation of whether the user is trusted or not. So in that manner, basically, once we have a trust token, let's say the student didn't have any trust token, right? So if the student had any trust token, then in that case over here it would be written as yes. So let's say lender one is wants to lend that 2 ethers to the student. So what he will do is he will click on lend and he will confirm the transaction from his wallet. And once it is done, it will not be available in the open requests, and it will be in the my requests. So basically lender one has sent that particular amount to that student. And if we go back and we go to the student account, and if you go to the my request section, we have the option to withdraw. So basically the amount has been dispersed and we have an option to withdraw that particular amount. Initially the student had approximately 100 ethers, and now if we commit this transaction, then the student should have more than that. Yes, so 102 ethers minus the gas fee, we have approximately 101.97 ethers. So basically the student received a loan from that lender, and if he wants to pay back, he can quickly pay back from his own account. And this time when the payback is done, you see the amount is not 2.5. See, the payment amount was supposed to be 2.5 ethers. Then why over here it is 3.5? So if you remember that there was initially when we were manipulating the members in the management area, there was a contract fees of 1 ethers. So that contract fees is levied to the customer end user, the student in this case, for using this platform. So basically this 2.5 ethers includes 2 ethers as the principal amount and 0.5 as the interest amount, plus 1 ether as the payment for using this platform. Now we see that the state of that particular loan is paid back, and if we go to the lender's account, we'll be able to see the change in their my requests area. Now this loan has been paid back and they can withdraw into their own wallet. Yes, from 94 something ethers to it has a student who was asking for a loan, and we dispersed that loan based on open lending requests over here. And over here, if you see in this lending pool, so this particular area is called the lending pool, where all the open requests are present. And we'll now go ahead with the example of trusted. So let's say lender one itself wants to borrow some money, right? In that case, that particular person will ask for a loan, and if the person, if this lender commits a transaction, in the contract, and they ask for a loan, then if we go back and into the lender other lenders open request section, we'll be able to see, yes, this particular user is trusted. So basically, since this lender had trust tokens issued to them, they are trusted over here. So again, this process is similar to the other similar to the student process. Now, if we go to the management area, we have another feature over here. So let's say, suppose the student over here, if we go and check for the student, we did not have any trust tokens issued to them. So if you see here, the trust token balance is 0, right? So now let's say one of these lenders wants to give some voting power to this student as well. So now the student has probably graduated and he wants to be a part of this blockchain. So in that manner, if you go and go to the lenders area in the management, you can see that in the member area, okay, over here we have an option to approve user. So let's say we want to send some trust tokens to this student, right? So that they are able to access this member area. Now we can do that by sending him trust tokens. We can even approve them. So let's say suppose he does not have any trust tokens available with him right now, and he wants to be able to use those trust tokens, and he wants to commit a transaction using those trust tokens which he does not have. In that case, so let's say if suppose lender one wants to approve that this particular user for making a transaction. So what we'll do is we'll copy the address of the student, and we'll allow them certain amount. So let's say suppose we give them an allowance of 100 trust tokens, and if we approve that and commit this transaction using our wallet. So yeah, they're asking that whether we want this local host to use our trust tokens or not. So basically, once we have approved this user, the student user, and if we go back into the management area of the user, the student user, we'll be able to see that, okay, so lender one has allowed them certain allowance, and we'll check how much that allowance is. So basically, we are allowed to spend 100 trust tokens for this particular account. And we can now, even without having that token balance, this user is able to commit transactions based on the allowance given to them by the lender. So let's say the allowance, we want to use that allowance and we want to bring into our, the student wants to bring into his own account, right? So we'll give the token amount, and we will give the from address as well to the student's account. And if we commit this transaction, you see the trust token balance will be increased from 0 to 100. That implies that the lender was able to send or approve this particular user to use their to authorize and to give control over their own certain amount of trust tokens. And once the trust tokens are given, then in that case, if we refresh and if we go to the member area, we'll see that because this particular user was issued some trust tokens, he was able to gain access to the member area. And now after that student has used those trust tokens and he wants to send back to the lender, we'll give the trust token amount and we'll send. As you can see, the difference between a lender and user once they have trust tokens is that the student user does not have any investment amount. So over here it is 0 Ether, while for other users, for different lenders, it is the amount that they initially invested during the ICO. Now if we refresh it, yeah, so basically the student user is now unable to access the management area.
So I would just like to quickly go over through the benefits of the proposed system. So as you saw, we used trust tokens to issue power and control over the governance of the blockchain across the trustees. And these trust tokens can be utilized in a decentralized manner. And here we performed lending practices between two nodes without the requirement of banks. And over here, anyone can become a lender or a borrower without any prerequisites of paperwork or anything of that sort. And the one of the key points is that returns over cryptocurrencies are much higher compared to the fiat currencies, which include our normal currencies like rupee, dinar, and all those. So what we have done achieved over here is we have removed that banks and NBFCs from the lending procedure, and we have saved the customer from a lot of cost overheads, including the stamp duty fees, processing fees, etc. Now, there are certain demerits to using blockchain for this purpose, and one of them is that blockchain is very resource hungry, and it has very high hardware requirements, and it one more thing is that blockchain is immutable. So if you commit a transaction by mistake, it is almost next to impossible to make corrections to that, and there is still a possibility of having a 51% hacking attempt using brute force techniques, but it is highly unlikely to happen, and there is no precedent. And in all the history of Bitcoin and other blockchains, probably since 2009, there have been very feeble, attempts of this. And yeah, so also the blockchain, for blockchain to prosper, cryptocurrencies will have to be universally adopted in order to implement certain this type of use case for a longer term. So yeah, so what we achieved here is we used the smart contracts for P2P lending, and lending requests were successfully processed, and we decentralized the voting power. That's all from my side. And any questions, please, I'm more than happy to answer.
Yes, is there any questions from the participants you can ask?